even when I'm down. Got my head in the clouds and my feet on the ground. I got big dreams.
Yeah, we got big dreams in the Genius Lab that we're going to make true. Thank you for tuning into my podcast today. Today's podcast is called When the Trauma Strikes. And one of the things that I've been working with, I was recently certified. I'm a self-empowerment trainer, and I was recently certified in tactical resilience process and emotional clearing technique. And so I'm an officially certified TRP and ECT coach. Aren't you impressed? Actually, it's great stuff, and it's really, really, really powerful. And I want to talk today about trauma because I've been having a lot of clients that have come to me about things that happened in the past, things that they have blamed themselves for decades often, and things that happened that are truly, truly terrible. Some of the stuff that I've heard is, and what's so interesting is that the TRP, the beautiful thing about it, I call it we can remove the trauma without the drama. This is content free. You do not ever relive and get emotionally charged by the event, whatever it is. There are techniques to help pull you out if you start getting sucked into it, because some events are so traumatic that the emotional response is, you can't control it. It's like off the top, crazy kind of thing. And so the last thing we want to do is get you all fired up. We want to keep you calm, because the basic idea of tactical resilience process is to reprogram the way that your mind and your nervous system processes a memory. Okay, pretty cool, huh? Now, we could put you into shock therapy and hook electrodes up to your head and zap you and maybe try and get rid of your memory, but there's no guarantee that that'll actually happen. Chances are that memory will never go away, but how your nervous system responds to it is the important thing. Get you out of that fight and flight mode and get you into, in some cases, people will tell me their story, and initially they start to talk about it and they get all choked up, or they get pissed off, or, they have a very strong emotional reaction. After we run them through the process a couple of times, they go, oh, I feel like I'm talking about an event that happened to somebody else. It's really cool. So the idea is to get you out of the shit and into the healing. So the thing to think about when drama strikes, it can be like lightning, right? Like, have you ever seen lightning strike? Of course. Did you ever guess where it was going to strike? Of course not. You can't tell where lightning's going to strike. You can take precautions, like when there's cloud to ground lightning all over the place, don't stand out in the middle of the rain, holding your hands up. Don't play golf during a lightning storm, and don't hang on to flagpoles and such. Matter of fact, stay away from large metal objects when there's lightning around. But the situation is you can still get hit by lightning. Okay? Just because you take the precautions doesn't mean it's not going to happen to you. So sometimes it just hits, and before you know it, you just got knocked on your ass. You just got betrayed by your best friend. You just got beat up by a complete stranger. Somebody just rear-ended your car because they didn't like the way you were driving, and they wanted to make sure that you pull over, and they beat you up. You can't believe the shit that I've heard. So you can't predict it. You can simply do all that you can do to avoid getting yourself in the thick of it. Okay? So the other thing about trauma is you can't negotiate it. You can try all you want to but think about it. You can't negotiate with it, and you can't buy your way out of it. Think about war. I work with a lot of veterans, okay? They have been shot. They have watched their friends get shot. Their vehicles have been blown to smithereens by IEDs. You can't negotiate that, and you can't buy your way out of that either. Think about hurricanes and tornadoes. I worked with one person in Hawaii that was in Iniki. That was back in 1991, and they still carry the post-traumatic stress from that horrible, horrible, tragic event that literally desecrated the island of Kauai. And you can't negotiate with that hurricane, and you can't buy your way out of it either. When you think of people who are greedy, who will stop at nothing to take what they want. You can't necessarily negotiate out of it or buy your way out of it. I mean, sometimes with greed you can pay it off, but usually that's a never-ending cycle. And then, of course, you have the physical abuse, hatred, and abuse of power. We see that a lot in the political circles nowadays, and it's amazing how people, things that you and I would be arrested for, some of our political leaders are doing and getting away with it fine. And no one's saying a word and no one's doing anything about it. And that's one of my big triggers, injustice. And we have one set of rules and the people who lead us have another. And I won't even get rolling on that. But that's a big trauma for me. And part of that is because of my childhood. And the thing that happens about trauma is that it's impervious to your knowledge and your logic. It's not something you can logic yourself out of, although people try all the time. I remember talking to someone who had been brutally assaulted, and they said, well, they were probably just angry because they had a bad childhood. It doesn't fucking matter. They assaulted you. And they logic it out. Oh, well, other people get hurt worse than I did and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's amazing. But trauma is trauma. And so when you're suffering, when you feel yourself go into that fight or flight, when you feel your blood pressure rise, when you feel your pulse start to race, you're reacting and your nervous system is freaking out, right? And so what's really important is to have a way to diffuse it. And, it's funny. I tried to negotiate a house fire one time, and I did not fare well. I watched everything that I own burn to the ground, except my mountain bike and a pair of skis. I had a mountain bike and a pair of skis in the entry hall. And when the firefighters broke in the front door, they took those things and threw them outside, and they were the only things that survived the fire. It was pretty crazy. But, it didn't work well. So the other thing to think about trauma, and particularly when it involves something personal, is that you really want to. I work with a lot of people that start to blame themselves. Well, I should have known better. You know what? If you knew better, you wouldn't have done it. Okay. And because you trusted somebody, like I have a situation in my family where I actually trusted somebody to carry out the wishes of my father, just happens to be, and they didn't, and I got screwed and I got pissed. And the thing that was so pissy about it is not what happened, but how it happened. Everything was done behind my back, and I found out about it ex post facto. And if they would have just had a conversation about it and explained their deal, it would have been fine. But instead, it had to be this big traumatic thing. But the deal is, it's not my fault. Okay? I didn't do anything to deserve it. And it's a situation where I'm not going to suffer for something that someone else did. So I worked TRP on this thing, and it was great. I don't hate that person anymore. I don't like them, but I certainly don't hate them anymore. And I'm certainly not going to let that incident ruin my life. And what's really funny is when I think about it and talk about it, it's like I'm teaching people a lesson about trust, not freaking out about my own, poor me, this happened. I'm completely out of victim consciousness and connected to a solution-oriented thing. I learned a huge lesson, learned a great lesson about trust, about covering my ass when something's really important to me, and not just assuming that someone will have my best interest in mind. And so it was really good. So I realized it's not my fault, which is a big thing. It's probably not your fault. It's probably a combination. It's also probably a combination of life experiences. The thing is, a lot of times people react to something, even people who assault other people, they're not actually thinking about hurting the person they're actually hurting. It's usually their perpetrator. Particularly with sexual assault, almost always, I mean, we're talking 98% of the time, a person who is convicted of sexual assault has been sexually assaulted themselves. So the person they're assaulting is the person that assaulted them. It just happens to be in your body, which is really fucked up. But it's a situation where, again, it's not your fault, and it's probably combined life experiences. The same thing with your reaction to a trauma. A lot of times, like when I have a reaction to injustice, okay, part of that might be because I was physically abused by my mother when I was a little tiny kid. So here's this big giant mom. Mom's supposed to be the loving, nurturing being in your life, the representation of God or whatever. And they're beating the shit out of you, and you're just this little tiny defenseless kid. That can trigger a lot of shit. So I look, it's my response to being screwed over or my response to injustice has to do with other life experiences. Think about, when someone yells at you, what's your response? Is it, oh gosh, I shouldn't have hurt their feelings, or I shouldn't have whatever you did? Or do you listen, or is the first thing out of your mouth, what the fuck is their problem? Why are they yelling at me? And it's really interesting. Think about that. Look at the people in your life that you know of. We see this with the millennials a lot. They never think of themselves as doing anything wrong. It's all, what's that person's problem? And in one way, it's really fucking annoying because they don't ever take responsibility for themselves. In another way, it's very refreshing because they don't let people put their shit on them. And so if somebody yells at you, what's your first response? What did I do? Or what the fuck is their problem? Okay, think about it. If you are in a healthy situation, most of the time, I would say the healthiest response is, what the fuck is their problem? And then if you find out it's your problem, do something about it to fix it. Okay? But don't blame yourself first. What if somebody falsely accuses you? Do you think that, what did I do to get this false accusation? Or this person's out of their freaking mind? Okay? How about if as someone personally assaults you, what are they really assaulting? Are they assaulting their mom? Are they assaulting their dad? Are they assaulting a teacher who kicked the shit out of them when they were a little kid? People usually don't just spontaneously jump all over a situation unless there's something there. But the most important thing to remember, regardless of your history with whatever trauma you're dealing with, is that it can go away. You do not have to live with the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. You do not have to live with fight and flight. You do not have to live with not sleeping. You do not have to live in fear. There is a way, and there's a way that is amazing and fantastic and very, very powerful and very successful. We're looking at like a 97% success rate, and we're starting a clinical trial so that we can actually establish that number scientifically. But when we look at the practitioners who are using it and the data that they're collecting with their clients, it's unbelievable, the success rate. So think about it. If you would like to remove your trauma without a bunch of drama, without reliving the episode, without connecting, literally rewire the way your nervous system responds to a memory. Get in touch with me, Toby at TobyChristensen.com. Let's see if TRP is right for you, and let's see what we can do about getting you into a place of peace, a place of confidence, a place of power, and a place where you keep looking up.